Okay, hello everyone. Today we're here in Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020 in JustFlight's Piper Arrow 3. We have a 94 nautical mile flight to Bravo Delta Romeo Bridgeport with a stop at Lima Delta Juliet Linden. We'll be flying VFR underneath the New York Bravo, so we've got some complex navigation using the Hudson River Exclusion to get us along our way without a Bravo transition. So today's flight is a double feature with 2 takeoffs and landings. Should be fun. Let's hop into the pilot seat and get started. If you've watched my last few videos, you know that I've been working on an integrated checklist for the Piper Arrow by JustFlight. I've posted that to flightsim.to. I'll put the link here in the video details so that you too can have it. This is version 2 of the checklist, so I figured out how to get the integrated cameras working with the checklist items so that as you do items, it will pivot the camera and zoom in on exactly what you're supposed to be doing. One of the features of the Piper Arrow is the ability to turn on the co-pilot and have him visible from the cockpit. In my last video I mentioned that my wife has nicknamed him Floyd. She just thinks he looks like a Floyd, so he's going to be the star of today's flight. So we flew Floyd to Morristown in our last video from Monmouth, and Floyd spent the weekend in Linden. So for today's flight, we're going to fly by ourselves from Morristown to Linden, pick up Floyd, and then fly Floyd to Bridgeport. Morristown is a Class Delta airport. It's underneath the Bravo. The Bravo shelf itself starts at 3,000, but Linden is an untowered airport, and it's very close to Newark. In fact, the Bravo shelf starts just at 1,200 over Linden. If you look at Linden's charts, its pattern altitude is 800, so it's very low. The shelf in front of it starts at 1,500, so net, we're going to need to fly at 1,200 for the short flight from Morristown to Linden, because we're going to have to descend to that altitude anyway. There are 2 non-directional beacons, one at Morristown and one at Linden. Chatham is near Morristown and Chisa is near Linden, so we will use both to navigate to Linden. We could probably visually navigate there, but with the shelves changing and not having a GPS that displays airspaces on board, we'll use an AVAID to keep us legal. Once at Linden, we'll stop, we'll pick up our buddy Floyd, and then we'll get underway again. We're going to head south on departure until we get to the shoreline, and then we'll follow the shoreline until we get to the Verrazano Narrows Bridge. We are flying in the Hudson River Exclusion. I've done a couple flights there now. You'll need the terminal area chart from the FAA to see the rules for that, but there are special flight rules with an entry from the south at the Verrazano Narrows Bridge and an exit at the north at the Alpine Tower. We'll need to stay below 1,300, so we'll plan on flying at 1,100 for this flight, and we need to hug the east coastline because we're heading north. We'll just be on CTAF since we are not in the Bravo while we are over the Hudson, but there are special flight rules with required reporting points along the way, and they are marked on the terminal area chart for the section of the Hudson River Exclusion. Once we get the Alpine Tower in sight, we will know that we are clear of the exclusion zone, and it's time to turn. So we will have the Bridgeport VOR dialed into CDI 1 with a 085 radial to Bridgeport planned. So we'll turn 085, intercept the radial, and then follow it right to Bridgeport. Bridgeport is a Class Delta, so they will choose our runway assignment, but based on the current winds, I'm expecting a left downwind for runway 24. We won't be using the GPS at all for this flight. Instead, we'll be using NDBs for the first portion, visual navigation for the middle, and then intercepting a VOR for the last segment of the flight. We do have a DME, so I will configure that and use that because it never hurts to know how far you have to go. Morristown ground, Piper 359 Golf Charlie with information, India. West ramp, southeast departure, request taxi. Taxi runway 23 run-up area at Alpha via Bravo Alpha cross runway 13 November 359 Golf Charlie. We're streaming live ATC from live ATCnet from Morristown, and they're pretty chatty today. Okay, we will pull over here into the run-up area on Alpha and run through a quick run-up. Getting the cameras to swivel to the right piece of equipment for the checklist involved setting up custom camera views and saving them in the camera.config file, which was a bit of a learning curve, but it all seems to be working out now. Morristown ground, Piper 359 Golf Charlie, continue. Taxiing Old Short, runway 23, Piper 359 Golf Charlie. Get our flaps set, get all of our lights on, complete our before takeoff checklist. Morristown Tower, Piper 359 Golf Charlie, holding short, runway 23. Cleared for departure, runway 23, maintain VFR at or below 1,500, Piper 359 Golf Charlie. Cleared left and right, clear straight ahead. Alright, we are good, let's go.
Climbing in the southeastbound turn to 2,000 feet.
JustFlight released an update to the Piper Arrow 3, and it does fix several of the bugs that were in the launch version. One of the things I noticed is the ground handling is much better. In fact, I'd say it's spot on now. So in my last couple of videos, you saw it turn into a Mario Kart when you got up near 60 knots, and now it's smooth. So great job on that. There's a couple other quirks. They managed to break the compass, so the compass will randomly stop working and just get stuck on north. But there is a workaround for it that involves editing a file. If you are comfortable doing that, you can find that on the JustFlight forums, and I'm sure they'll get that fixed in the next patch. See what I mean there for the takeoff? That looked great. It was right on center line, and I'm applying right rudder now on takeoff, so whatever they tweaked works great. The CDIs still misbehave. I think the problem is that they remain coupled to the GPS instead of the nav radio by default, and if you're running with the Garmin 100 like I have installed, you actually have to toggle it to one of the other GPS units, turn on the GPS, switch it from GPS to the nav radio to couple the CDIs to it to get them to work. You can see the ADF spinning. It's the lower left-hand gauge there, so we are right over Chatham, which means we can make our turn. I'm going to dial in the CHISA frequency for our ADF, and we're going to fly right to Linden using it. Let's enjoy some of that scenery for the first leg of our trip. Is already talking my ear off. Apparently he's had a wild weekend and he's got some stories to tell me, so that should pass the time for the remainder of the flight. We've switched over to Newark, which is the nearest airport that we'll be monitoring. We're actually on CTAF since this is an untowered airport for making our radio calls. How about that landing on the way in? I think I'm getting a feel for the Arrow now. You definitely have to keep power in as you come in, and a little bit of speed helps you keep everything on center line. Alright, another good rotation, so really happy with the tweaks that JustFlight made with this patch. We'll get our flaps up, we've got our gear up. Making our turn, so we're going to head south until we get to the shoreline, and then from there it's visual navigation following the Hudson. So let's sit back and enjoy some of that awesome flight simulator scenery. Alright, that was a lot of fun. I know you've seen me do the Hudson River Exclusion a couple times, but if you like flying VFR, it's the way to go if you don't want to get a Bravo clearance. This flight probably would have been easier with a Bravo clearance, but it was certainly more scenic and more fun without one. This was a bit of a longer flight for me with a bit of complexity, but it was awesome. I really liked all the flight planning and enjoyed the eye candy along the way. So if you enjoy content like this, be sure to click that like button, hit subscribe, and leave me a comment. Thanks, as always, for flying along with me, and stay tuned for further flight adventures.